We have all heard the term what goes around comes around, but specifically what does this mean? Today we're going to be focusing on how your Saturn placement can dictate the karma for others who do you wrong. Before we jump into this video, I want to disclose that karma has a lot of different meanings depending on a lot of different cultures, okay? But for the simplification of this video, we are just going to refer to karma as what people will get back for doing harm to you, either intentionally, unintentionally, you name it. How do we figure this out in a birth chart, you may be wondering? For the sake of this video, we will be focusing on what specific house your Saturn placement lies in order to determine how karma is reaped by those who do you wrong. Before we get into this video, if you need to look up your astrological chart, I recommend pausing the video here. Let's get into it. Start off with the first house. The first house in astrology really has to do with the sense of self, the ego, the identity, and the outward appearance. When somebody messes with somebody who has Saturn lying in the first house, usually their karma is in the form of their self-identity. You will see this person individually struggle with their sense of self. A lot of people do report that people may get uglier, and in that aspect that they might not be keeping up with self-care or really investing in their looks anymore. They may really grow to feel very insecure, uncomfortable in their skin, and this is simply a part of their karmic lesson for doing whatever they did to that individual. The second house. If somebody does somebody else wrong who has Saturn in the second house, they can expect this to happen to them. The second house really has to do with money, possessions, finances, as well as what they value in life. So when somebody messes with somebody who has Saturn in the second house, their karmic debt really has to do with how they obtain money, how they keep money, and their day-to-day life. Specifically, you see a lot of struggles or changes affect them directly in their career. However, it can also come in the form of having unexpected finances piling up on you. Specifically, think of somebody who just got in a car accident and cannot necessarily afford any other way of transportation. Also plays out mostly with people losing their career or something of value to them. And this can play out in any aspect, such as a house, a relationship, but mostly you're focusing on money for this aspect. Third house. The third house has to do with mental activities, siblings, as well as communication. When somebody messes with another person who has Saturn in the third house, you can see it play out specifically like this. You will ultimately see that person have a decline in mental health. As well, you'll often see that person having a falling out with close family members or even roommates in that sense. As well, you'll often see this individual go through a sense of impulsivity and self-destruction. Also, their communication will be stunted, so they may find themselves in petty arguments or drama with others, such as coworkers, close friends, family, just in the sense that they have issues expressing themselves and may be more prone to act on impulse, causing a lot of drama, pettiness, and stuff that they usually would not appreciate in their life. When you mess with somebody who has Saturn in the fourth house, you can expect this to happen. The fourth house has to do with the home, the parent. In result, if somebody messes with a Saturn fourth houser, you will often see them having issues with their family and falling outs due to such. If you mess with somebody who has Saturn in the fifth house, it has to do with romance, children. Specifically, the way that I often see this played out is individuals will often struggle with love after initially doing that person wrong. This can come in the form of platonic or romantic love, but you'll often see a falling out, whether it be with a long-term committed partner or just having issues finding somebody who is suitable to their romantic and sexual needs. This will often take a toll on that person's individuality, thinking that there is a flaw within themselves. If you mess with somebody who has Saturn in the sixth house, this is a very hard one. I know from experience, I do have Saturn in the sixth house, and I can tell you exactly how this plays out with people whom I've seen in my day-to-day life. The sixth house has to do with stability. It also has to do with your work ethic, your work prioritization, as well as your health. Specifically, the way that this karmic debt plays out is the person who did that individual wrong, who has Saturn in the sixth house, will suddenly have their sense of stability ripped away from them. The way I specifically see this, and I've been telling everyone this for years before I actually looked into this placement, people's cars will break down once they have done me dirty. For the longest time, I wondered why this is, but it makes sense because honestly, as an adult living in 2022, you need your car, okay? But in that aspect, it would be the equivalent to anything that individual needed to feel stable. A support system, a car, their work, and so on. You can also see individuals starting to struggle with finances and work after hurting a sixth houser. As well, you can see them suddenly get sick. Whether this be a major or minor illness, it usually is a quick hitter, but it comes very random and at the most inconvenient time, honestly. When somebody hurts another individual who has Saturn in the seventh house, this really has to do with marriage, partnership, as well as enemies, okay? When somebody hurts somebody who has Saturn in the seventh house, you often see them going through really harsh, intense breakups, okay? Whether this be platonically, with family, with romance, something specific happens, and that is usually the karmic debt that they have to pay. As well, specifically because the 7th house also rolls over enemies, you may also see their close friends specifically turn into enemies or sources of drama and stress within their personal life. Again, this is karmic debt. It's the way that has to go. When somebody hurts another individual who has Saturn in the 8th house, this has to do with sex, death, and money. A good time, but let's explain further. So specifically, the way I would see this karma play out would be having issues performing in bed, okay? Or not feeling confident performing in bed with either new partners or somebody who you have had a long-term partnership with, such as a relationship and so on. Suddenly, there is this level of insecurity when it comes to sexual activity. Due to the fact that this is ruled by literally death, you might see this individual not die, okay? That would be bad, but go through a sense of death and rebirth within their personal life, but in a very harsh and intense way. I see this house specifically, I think Scorpio, and Scorpio is a sign that is literally dying and reborn all the time. However, when it comes to paying karmic debts and somebody who has Saturn in the 8th house, you would often see this played out in a sense of somebody suddenly losing their stable job that they have worked for all their life and having to really restart from rock bottom. As well, of course, because it also involves money, you would see financial loss or having to spend more finances than you are capable in that present moment and finding a way to really catch up with that. If you hurt somebody who has Saturn in the 9th house, it has to do with higher education, travel, as well as religion. So this is a very interesting placement for me to see. This person may start to have travel issues as a form of karmic debt within their day-to-day life, meaning if they are late to work, their car shuts down, or if they take the train, there's some delays with that. In result, on a karmic level, they may have some issues with delays or missing very important opportunities due to travel issues in general. When it comes to higher education, if they are still in school, they may start to struggle academically. And when it comes to religion, this individual may have a sense of loss in hope or loss in a greater sense of source, depending on what religion they previously followed. Overall, a lot of existential dread, a lot of annoying little tidbits, but all those add up, trust me, and that would be the karmic debt for anyone messing with another in the 9th house. Anyone who messes with an individual who has Saturn in the 10th, this really has to do with your reputation as well as your career. This is very self-explanatory, but obviously this individual will start to struggle on a career and financial level. Specifically, this can be shown in the form of job loss, loss of money. And what's interesting with the paired reputation, this could be in the form of a loss of promotion or a loss of status and representation in their career life. This individual who messes with the 10th houser may start to get a bad rep, be known as lazy, manipulative, somebody who you do not want on your personal team. This can play out overall in love, career, finances, whatever requires somebody to have a good reputation in that standpoint. When it comes to if you mess with somebody who has Saturn in the 11th house, this has to do with friendship, goals, your sense of belonging, as well as hope towards the future. So we often see this played out with loss of friendship, obviously. However, their goals are starting to get shaken up. What once was a very clear-cut plan in order for them to find personal success has faced a blockage in the road. This often plays out karmically with this individual losing a sense of hope for themselves and often feeling like they no longer belong, causing a lot of existential dread, which ultimately will cause long-term damage on a karmic level. And when you mess with somebody who has Saturn in the 12th house really has to do with solitude, dreams, fears, illusions, and the subconscious. This house is very explanational. When somebody messes with another who has Saturn in the 12th house, this really has to do with this individual now having to self-sabotage more often than not. Well, when it comes to solitude, they will be forced to be alone, especially if this individual was once a very extroverted person or had a very stable support group. You will slowly see this fade, and this individual will have to be forced to really learn their mistakes in a sense of solitude so that they can ultimately clear out that karmic debt that they caused to the individual who has Saturn in the 12th house. And that pretty much sums it up based on how others will receive karma for doing you wrong based off your Saturn placements. Now, if we want to go more in depth, you can also look at the degree that your Saturn placement is in, zodiac sign, and so on. If you guys want a more detailed video, I can 100% do that. Drop a comment below letting me know. Thank you for joining in. My name is Divine Raven Tarot. You can find me on all my social medias here. And if you want to book a private reading with me, check out this below, and you can see it linked in my profile.